Well, this year marks the 250th anniversary of the United States of America. At least that was when our Declaration of Independence came around, which resulted in the Revolutionary War. Following that, the founders had to figure out a constitution, the rules that we have to live under, and the Constitution was designed to control government. It basically said this is what the government cannot do to the populace. That's why the Constitution exists. Well, when it was created by people like James Madison, he said, we got to figure out how long people are going to be coming to Washington, D.C. or Philadelphia, or wherever it was at that particular time, how long they're going to serve. Well, as it turns out, if you remember back in those years, there weren't roads. There were trails, yes. There weren't airplanes, there weren't highways, there weren't cars, there weren't any of those things. So if someone had to come down from one state to down to the Constitutional Congress, it could take days, weeks, could take a long time because they had to go by a horse or buggy or wagon or whatever. So they came up with the idea of how long should people be able to serve? Well, most of the people back in that era were farmers. They're out there trying to struggle for life, keep food on the plate for their families. They weren't big-time businessmen. They were just regular people. So they said, okay, House of Representatives, we're going to have people serve for 2 years. They figured 2 years was a pretty good stretch. Now, that was in the House of Representatives. In the Senate, they said, well, we're going to make that for 6 years because, well, the Senate people are supposed to be older, more wizened, more understanding of life. Back in that particular time period, you know what the longevity period was to live? Around 40 years of age. If you lived past 40, you were an oldster. Well, that's how it was back then. So they said, okay, Senate, you get 6 years. Figured, one shot, you get it done, you leave, you go back to your farm, your homestead, or wherever it was you were living. The same for the House of Representatives. 2 years in the House and 6 years in the Senate. Well, that sounded good back at the time. Unfortunately, it didn't work out that way. Today, you have senators in there who are lifelong. I mean, that's the only job they've had since they got out of college or law school or whatever they did. You got people serving in Congress 40, 50, 60 years on a 2-year term. Well, a number of states have tried to get a constitution or tried to get a rule, a law for their state saying, okay, in this state, you can only serve for 2 years as a congressman or 4 years or 6 years, whatever that state decides in their laws. Well, every one of those states had representatives who went to the courts and said, hey, you can't do that to us. One of the last states, I think, to do it, I think 23 states have tried it. I think the last state to try it was Idaho, if memory serves me right. And they went to the United States Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court said, no. Constitution says 2 years for representatives and 6 years for senator, but there's no time limit on it. It's in the Constitution. It's what the Supreme Court said. All those 23, tries by other states have been knocked down by the courts. So where do we stand today? Well, we stand today that Donald Trump has come before the House and the Senate and said, I want to put in new rules and regulations for serving. If you're going to be in the House of Representatives, you get 3 2-year terms. Total of 6 years, and then you're done. You want to serve in the Senate, you get 2 6-year terms, that's 12 years. Let's see, 12 years in the Senate, 6 years in the House. That's what the president is proposing to the Congress. He's also proposing that we go back to paper ballots instead of computer ballots because he said computers can be altered. And there's some truth to that. But paper ballots, maybe election holiday, I don't know about that. But counting the same day, knowing what's going on, and getting rid of mail-in ballots, getting rid of them, except for like the military and people with a genuine physical excuse. Doctor's permit, if you will. No mail-in ballots because their fraud is really big. They have discovered just how bad that is. Same-day election, paper ballots, 2 years, 2-year terms for 3 times in the House for 6 years, and 2 6-year terms for a senator. That's what the president is proposing. Now, do you think the House of Representatives is going to pass any of those ideas? If you do, I've got some waterfront property to sell you in Wyoming. Yeah. That ain't going to happen, folks. Sorry. There's no way the people in Congress are going to allow that to happen because they're like their cushy little jobs. They like their perks. They like all the stuff they're getting and all the money they're making because you go into Congress as poor as a church mouse and you could come out as a multimillionaire. How do they do that? Well, ask AOC how she went from being dirt poor to millions of dollars in her account. And Omar and all these other people who are out there, suddenly they go from being impoverished to being multimillionaires in Congress. Gee, how does that happen? Well, can it be stopped with the lobbyists spending all the money on these people? Probably not. But if you want to have the changes, it's not going to happen in the House. It's not going to happen in the Senate. The only way it can be done is if the majority of states get together and say, we want to have a constitutional meeting. And if around 35 to 38 states, I think it's 35 states vote that we want to have a constitutional meeting, referendum, if you will, to be able to review the Constitution and make changes, they're the only ones now that can do it. You're not going to see it through the House or the Senate. It ain't going to happen. But could you see it if 35 states get together and say that? Yes. But keep in mind, many of the states do not want that to happen because they're afraid they're going to lose their power. Power is what this is all about. This is about fighting for control. And if they figure they're going to give up control, they ain't going to let it happen. That's what Congress is saying. Now, the lobbyists, they don't care. They're going to pay off who's ever in there. They don't really care. Matter of fact, the younger it is, the more they think they're going to get paid because the young people want money. The old people, they got so much money, they don't really care so much anymore. I don't know what the heck they want in Congress. Is it going to change? Well, we have a Continental Congress where the people come in and say, hey, we're going to change the Constitution. I don't think that's going to happen either, folks. The idea of getting 2 terms for Senate and 3 terms for the House, it's a great idea. It's a wonderful idea, but I do not think it's going to happen in our lifetime or even your lifetime because the powers that be don't want it to happen because they're too fat and happy in their job. And they don't want to give up that power. They don't want to give up the money, and they don't want to give up the prestige. Yes, the president is proposing it, but I believe this is one of those issues that ultimately is going to go nowhere. That's my opinion, and now you know.